Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you hear us? Rabbi, can you hear me? Thank you very much. Hi, this is Yehuda Shamroth, broadcasting live from the great synagogue in the holiest city in the world, Jerusalem, Jerusalem Shel Zahav. Rabbi Winston is going to grace us with his beautiful Torah on Hanukkah tonight. So, for the Love of Hanukkah is our title. And without further ado, thank you very much for joining us once again, Rabbi Winston. And everybody should have a wonderful Shabbat, good Shabbos, a wonderful Hanukkah. Please bring your light to the world as best as you can, because that's what we need right now. And may we have a release of the hostages and end of this war today. Thank you, Rabbi.
Amen. Amen. Okay. Um, I saw something interesting very recently that I actually hadn't really seen before, but it was talking about the difference between Shem and Zayas and wine. That Shem and Zayas, it says, is bechashai, which means quietly, silent, and wine is right a ramakala is the Aramaic, I believe, which means with a raised voice, with a loudness. That's why a Cohen, he officiated in the base of Mikdash. He wasn't allowed to drink wine, first of all, while he was doing the avoda, and he wasn't allowed to raise his voice. He was actually it was a very quiet setting. And I mean, there might be sometimes it was a little hectic because of the karbanis and all that, but other than that, it wasn't a rowdy place, that's for sure. And part of the avoda, which involved the menorah and the Shem Hazayis, and the Shem Hazayis was not just for the menorah, but it's also for the menachos, for the karbanis. We use Shem Hazayis in lots of different places, and so there are different levels, different qualities of Shem Hazayis. But that was always considered to be b'chashar, in a quiet way. So Shem Hazayis, in a sense, represents the quietness of of the avoda, and wine is more of a rowdy, which is what you think about, which is what we're used to, because usually people who drink wine get very, very rowdy, very, very loud. It tends to bring loudness out. Purim is not a quiet holiday by any stretch of the imagination. And as the Gemara says, when wine goes in, secrets come out. So it represents that. Now, in some respects, you have similarities, for example, between a grape and an olive. Both the grape and the olive have a liquid inside of them that we use as to drink or to eat, and both you can't see that. It's not revealed. If you cut the grape open, juice doesn't come flying out. You can see it's moist. You can see there's a liquid inside, but it's not pouring out. It's not spilling out. You have to squeeze the grape to get the wine. Likewise, when it comes to an olive, you cut the olive open, and you can also see that it's moist inside, as all fruits tend to be. But it's until you squeeze the olive, you don't get the fuel or the food, for that matter. But the difference between the two of them is also very great, and that is that a grape that is ripe, you can take right off the vine, right, and you can eat it, and it tastes good. Even halachically, you can do that without taking meiser, because they're out in the field, right? While you're working in the field, you can take without taking meiser. But it's ready to go right away. But not an olive. If you take an olive, a ripe olive that's reached its full potential as an olive, off a tree, and you eat it, it'll be very bitter. Nobody eats, unless they really have to, eats bitter olives. Usually they pickle them first. So there's that difference. So in a sense, the grape is more obvious as a food, more obvious, in what it produces, because of the fact it's like louder, so to speak. Whereas the olive seems to be very different respect, that you like someone who doesn't know what an olive is and would see it growing in a tree, a black olive or even a green olive. You take it off the tree. They don't grow with those little red things inside, I don't think, right? And you take it off the tree and you cut it open. He would take a bite of it, and he's, well, who eats this stuff? And what's its use? It's like a non-fruit. Is it poison or something? But then you show them that you pickle it, you put it in salt water, whatever, and you make it tasty, and a lot of salt. That's why kids like it so much. Or you can make shemen zayis from it. But it's like more hidden, it's more chashar, it's more quiet. And this theme seems to carry through the whole holiday, because, for example, on Purim, which is also rabbinic in nature, that we have all there's so much going on. There's Mikra Megillah. It's a noisy holiday. The idea of during when you mention Haman and you do the grog or make noise, you hit the table, and some people actually bring instruments, drums and trumpets, you name it, if you have patience for stuff like that, and they make a lot of noise during Haman's name. It's an excuse to be loud and be rowdy in halachic framework, right? And of course, the Suda, people get drunk, and if they do, but it's louder. It's more out there. There's a joke that they often say, based upon I think something Julius Caesar once said, but they adapted it for the Jewish way of life, and it is: we came, we conquered, let's eat. That's the idea. We came, we conquered, let's eat. And by Hanukkah time, we didn't have to really come because in Eretz Israel, but we did conquer. We didn't eat. No one said, let's eat. By Purim, we made a Suda. We made a feast, right? A wine feast, to acknowledge what took place at that time. But there's a mitzvah of Suda. One of the 4 mitzvahs of Purim that we do on is the Mishteh, right? And it's meaningful because it's tied to what, to commemorate what the events were at that time. But it is part of the celebration, Pesach, Shavuos, right? Even Yom Kippur, that we don't eat on Yom Kippur per se, not per se at all, because unless a person's sick, God forbid. But we do have a festive meal erev Yom Kippur. There's a mitzvah it's like a Sudas Yom Tov to have a meal erev Yom Kippur because that's part of the Yom Tov feeling and Chag, not by Hanukkah. By Hanukkah, we eat plenty, 100%, latkes and sufganiyot and donuts and all kinds of chocolate, money, whatever. But there's no mitzvah to do it. Anytime a person sits down and has a Suda, doesn't make a difference. It doesn't. You don't need an occasion, but you make a Suda and you speak divrei Torah at that Suda, and you maybe sing some zmiros as well. That's appropriate, not like songs that they play on the radio, but but that's appropriate for the Suda itself. It's called a Sudas mitzvah. It's a Sudas reshus, meaning you don't have to do it at all. If you don't do it, you haven't broken any halacha. But if you do it, you get a mitzvah, you get schar, because you did something called a Sudas mitzvah. So on Hanukkah, it's a good thing to do, right? Once a day, twice a day, have and then you can say al nisim and benching, right? But if you don't have a single Suda the entire Hanukkah, you are not breaking any laws, because there's no mitzvah to celebrate Hanukkah, not even with latkes, right? We do it and we love it, but it's not a mitzvah per se. The mitzvah, the whole focus, interesting enough, has almost nothing to do with the victory, the military victory, which impresses us so much. I mean, that's what counts. We're afraid of pain. We're afraid of suffering. We're afraid of being conquered and going to exile. The fact that the menorah burned for 7 extra days, or that we found 1 jar of oil with the seal of the Kohen Gadol on it, is wonderful, but that's not what really gets us the most. I mean, it's a spectacle and it's great to celebrate, but we don't want to lose a battle. We're fighting a war. We want to win. We don't want to be, injured or God forbid, die or suffer in any way. So really, in the world at large, when people have a military victory, that's everything. You see, when they march into Damascus, they start shooting off. They don't run to have a Suda, some type of meal. No, they shoot guns in the air and they do all kinds to celebrate their military victory. And that's the way people tend to be. But that's not what we did. Instead, rather than go and sit down and make a Suda, we ran to the Beis Hamikdash. And we immediately tried to reinstate the service, the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, because it had to stop because of the Greeks and the Hellenists. And one of the first things we had to do was build some type of menorah, because we didn't have the original, menorah at that time. It was hidden away, and whatever was gone was taken or broken. And the Chashmonaim had to actually first build one from, I think it was just metal pieces, and then they put wood over it, and then eventually when they had the money, they made a gold menorah once again. But they went right back and they decided to light the menorah. It's supposed to be burning constantly. The Ner Maravi is supposed to burn all the time. So they had to relight that as soon as possible. And they searched and they searched and they searched and they looked, and all the jars of Shemen Zayis that had the seal of the Kohen Gadol on it to tell us that it was spiritually pure were all broken. And they just happened amongst all the rubble. Somehow the Greeks missed it. 1 jar remained. And they celebrated. So this is fantastic. It was just enough for one night, 1 day, really, right? But whatever. And then we go, because the truth is, had they not found any oil, or just that 1 jar, they could have still continued on with the mitzvah, because it's permissible when you have to use impure oil to light the menorah. it's ideal, obviously, and if you can and you don't, then that's going to be an avera because you're not doing the right thing. But in a shazad chak, in a very difficult situation, it would have been permissible to light the menorah with the impure oil. So the fact that it had 1 day of pure oil, okay, that's great. After that, we'll use impure oil until we can manufacture new pure oil, which takes 8 days altogether for some reason. Not exactly sure why. Probably because it has to be shemen zayis zach, which means clear of all sediment, and that may be, oil moves very slowly through a sieve. So to produce enough oil, it could take 8 days to do that. And that's what they set out to do. But to their absolute wonderment and pleasure, the oil burned the full 8 days until they had new oil to replace it that was pure. And so they made out, to commemorate that miracle the following year, which is also interesting because they didn't do it right away. They didn't say, "Oh wow, this is amazing. Let's now sit down and make a Suda now, make a holiday now because of what just took place. The next year we'll do it on the actual day itself because we now know after the fact." But the truth is, even the 25th of Kislev, when they had the miraculous victory, then that was already the time to make the Suda. But they were so intent on relighting the menorah that was their priority. So God said, "Listen, if that's your priority, that's your number one thing that you want to do, right? And let me help you out." And so he did the miracle of the oil. But what's amazing is after that, it was the military victory that led to that opportunity to light the menorah. But it's almost like forgotten. And we mentioned, of course, at Alanisim that the many were overcome by the few, and that the pure overcame the impure, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's almost in passing. But again, there's no real celebration of it per se, other than the fact that we light the menorah every night and another candle to it, which is, and in a sense, it's a very quiet holiday. It's very relaxing. It's almost therapeutic. I mean, I find it very therapeutic. It's an amazing thing how, to stare at a wall for 50 minutes is not easy to do unless you're looking at some kind of painting, right? To sit at a bus stop and do nothing, it's very hard to do. But it's amazing how you could stare at a Ner Shel Hanukkah. You don't even do it by Shabbos candles. Like Shabbos, they burn in the background. It's great. They're there for lights. But we don't sit there and stare at them. But there's a mitzvah to enjoy and to look at the Ner Shel Hanukkah, not to use them for the first half an hour or so, but to at least be nan there from the light that it's producing to remembering what's going on and what it represents. And you can just sit there quietly, no music in the background, no talking necessarily, and just stare at that light. And the shemen zayis, especially candles, no offense, guys, but it doesn't cut it. You yotzi, the mitzvah, right? Although it's not the best way because the mitzvah wasn't with wax. The mitzvah was with shemen zayis. So that's what you're supposed to use. But aside from that, it's just beautiful. Those little glass jars with the oil inside, burning with a nice, beautiful flame coming out of it, and the fact that you can even use shemen zayis to do that is absolutely remarkable, and it's transfixing. And you can just sit there, not pouring. Pouring, you don't sit still. You're moving around almost the entire time. And Hanukkah seems to be the exact opposite, just like the shemen zayis versus the wine in the end. So everybody seems to know why Hanukkah is a holiday because that's pretty obvious. The Gemara seems even after discussing the halachas. Let's start off with this. In Maseches Shabbos, where it's talking about the Perek Madlikim, which is talking about what you can use to light Shabbos candles with, the Gemara finds it appropriate also to talk about Hanukkah because Purim has its own Megillah. It's got a Megillah that we read, and it even has its own Masechta, its own tractate. Maseches Megillah is a tractate devoted to the holiday of Purim. Hanukkah doesn't have it. Hanukkah is a tag along inside Maseches Shabbos in the second Perek, dealing with wicks and dealing with the mitzvah of lighting the Ner Shel Hanukkah. And after dealing with the Ner Shel Hanukkah and the halachas of when to light and how much to light and all that, so the Gemara finally says, "My Hanukkah," not as opposed to your Hanukkah. Doesn't mean that. My Hanukkah is Aramaic for really, Mazeh Hanukkah. Like, what is this Hanukkah? Like, why is Hanukkah a holiday? Where did it come? What do you mean, why is it a holiday? We know why it's a holiday. So the Gemara does explain, goes on to say that we know on the 25th of Kislev that the Chashmonaim were able to overcome the Greek army And after they did that, it doesn't even say miraculous. It just said that they overpowered them, right? Which sounds like they had a larger army. Doesn't even mention the fact that it was against incredible odds, right? And they ran to the base of Mikdash and they found one jar of Shemen Zayas that had the seal of the Kohen Gadol. They lit it. It was only enough for one day. It burned for 7 days. And when the Chazal saw this miracle took place, so then they were koveya the 8 days of Hanukkah for the following year. From this point on, it's like they didn't even know it was supposed to be a holiday until the oil burned. Had they only found one jar of oil, which is a miracle, because they asked the question, why is Hanukkah 8 days long when the oil only burned for 7 extra days? Because it was a miracle that they found the jar itself with the seal unbroken. Okay, it's not the biggest miracle, smashing all these jars, and making a ball of God, and you're rushing through and you're not really paying such close attention. It's very possible that you can overlook one jar. Yes, it's hashgacha pratis. Nothing is random. Everything is, meant to be the way it's meant to be. But it's possible, in the course of life, that even though God may have arranged it, who's saying it's such a big deal? Well, we did. We thought it was a big deal. So because of that, we count it as one of the days of the miracle, and we add it to the 7 days of the extra burning and make it 8 days altogether. So they make it 8 days the following year. But it had it just burned for one day. Had they only found a jar of oil and it went out, and they had to use impure oil the next 7 days, it sounds like from the Gemara it wouldn't have been a holiday. The military victory itself wouldn't have been enough of a reason, even though it was by Purim time. But then we had prophets, right? We had Nevi'im at that time who could tell us, no, God said, make this a holiday. Even, Ruach, the Gemara discusses in Megillah that Mordechai and Esther, they had Ruach HaKodesh, they had this, this lesser form of prophecy that gave them the direction they needed to have to fight this thing and what to do after that. And there's a discussion about whether they should make it a holiday or not make it a holiday. And they established it because it was a different time period. Hanukkah is taking place at the time of the second base of Mikdash, the second temple. And basically we've lost touch with prophecy, although the Gemara does says Chacham Adif Minavi, which means a Talmid Chacham is greater and better than a prophet, right? Because a prophet gets prophecy and he may be a great person, but a Chacham is able to arrive at similar conclusions through his seichel, through the learning of Torah, and also Kodesh, and also Sefer Shmaya. But that's a higher level to be able to work your way up to, because that's yours. You've achieved that. And the truth is, many Nevi'im were already big Tam Chachamim, and the Nevuah took them even higher. But that's what the Gemara says. So, they were not enough, so to speak. They weren't considered to be Nevi'im in as much as, because we take this establishing of holidays very seriously. We don't just establish another holiday. Oh, here's a chance of another holiday. They can eat and drink, some more food, right? But if we're going to commemorate this for generations to come, we want to make sure this is what God wants. Now, we might have figured that out if we had known all the connections, but a lot of times that we only start looking for the connections after we start to see they exist, that there's significance to all of this. Maybe they did, maybe they knew it, maybe it came out later on. The truth is, I don't know the history of all the connections, but sitting here today in 5785, looking back in time, I mean, you can write several books on all the connections of Hanukkah, the Or HaGenuz, the of creation. But the amazing thing is, and this remains, some insights, some ideas you get in life, that at the time you have them, wow, that is, and it's like a dark runway all lit up all of a sudden, and you feel this is amazing. It's a game changer. And 1 year later, it's like, yeah, I remember that was nice. It's a nice idea. I still believe in it, but it loses its pizzazz. It loses its the energy. Maybe because you saw more things and you went beyond it. But some things, they don't lose it. They just remain remarkable all through the time. And one of the two remarkable things about this is that it works perfectly, and you don't get that so often when it comes to the gematrias and things like that. And the second thing is how nobody has really said anything about it until now. Basically, this is, I mean, all the parts and all the pieces. It's like, it's like someone talking about making a chassis of a car, and someone, here's that you make an engine, right? And then one guy's working the engines. He's got it all set up in his laboratory, whatever. He's got an engine like, but just in the old days when they started working the steam and things like that, right? And another guy's working on exhaust pipes. Another guy's working on different parts of the car, but no one puts it all together in a car. I mean, if you would go from house to house, like one guy would go from house to house to house, or laboratory to laboratory to laboratory, would say, you guys should get together and put it all together. You can make a car out of this and sell it for a lot of money one day, which is what they did. But it's like, if they didn't do it, you'd have all the parts of the car. They're all there. They all, reflect off each other, but you wouldn't have the car per se. And that's really what this equation is all about, that all the parts have been there the entire time. But for some reason, at least as far as I have seen until now, no one has really put it together, which at first makes you wonder if it's even true. So you test it like any theory, just like they do in, the Hubble in physics. You have this idea, it's out of the box, right? It's outside the box, and no one thought of it before. And it's even a hard sell at first for a lot of people. But as you work it through and you test it, because that's what they do. A theory lasts as long as it can withstand all the what do you call it? There's a word in sports for this. Well, it endures all the struggle and all that, but in this case, the tests, they keep punching holes, into it until as long as it can resist being brought down, the theory stands until eventually gets to a point where it's so obvious this is the truth, at least for the time being, because we have things like gravity that for the longest time was accepted to be a certain force acting a specific way, because that's answered so many equations. So Einstein came along and started to revise it because of other reasons, other things that came up. But this so far has stood the test of time. And it is really two parts, right? 25 plus 11 equals 36. I know you heard it last year, the year before that, the year before that. It's in the book, but it's worth reviewing every year because it is the basis of everything. This appropriately is called the equation of life. That's a big statement, right? There's no physics equation as complicated, as complex as they are today that they're looking for one that you can call the equation of life. It's usually just a discussion or an expression of some force, one of the forces of life. But until you get to the theory of everything, or the unified field theory, or what do you want to call it, that one equation that's the basis of all of the equations, we're not there yet. And you can get there. By the way, you can get there. Some of us are there. It's just that in order to get there, you have to accept a certain premise. And that premise is that one force is not physical. So if you can look for only the physical world, you're not going to find it. In fact, the statement that sums up that one force is Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. The equation, right? Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God equals one. He's that one force. He's called in halacha the force of forces. But this is the theory. This is not the theory. This is the equation that he used to make all of Ma'aseh Bereshis, to run all of Ma'aseh Bereshis. And basically what we're trying to establish in our own personal lives in order to be able to get a handle on what God expects from us and achieve personal tikkun, world tikkun, and get all the reward for doing so. So the equation is 25 plus 11 equals 36. And the other half of the equation is 25 subtract 11 is equal to 14. Now, mathematically, there's nothing to argue about. There's nothing to say. That is 100% true. But the math is a secondary part of all this discussion. There's the first and most important part is, what do these numbers represent? What do they mean? So to save time, we'll just go right through it, right? 25 and 36, those are the two key numbers, 25 and 36. Why? Because on the very first day of creation, it says in the third verse, V'yom Elokim yehi or Veyihi or. God said, let there be light, and there was light. And unless you read the Rashi in the next pasuk, because the next pasuk says that God decided that the light should be called day, and the darkness should be called night, and it was yom Vehi erev v'boker yom echad, right? And that's it. And so everybody's assuming that the light that God made on the first day is the light that we have today, whatever form it takes. And it's a problem that there's no sun, moon, and stars in the sky until Yom Revi'i. But that's like saying that there's no light bulb in the fixture right now. It doesn't mean that there's no light in the world. It doesn't mean that someone else doesn't have a light bulb in their house. So you don't have light right now, right? So the sun, the moon, the stars, their portion of that light didn't come to them until the fourth day. But the light's in the world, right? Until you read the Rashi in the fourth verse, which is according to Gemara in Chagiga, where it says that God looked into history. I mean, he didn't look. This is the Gemara talking on everyday language, but it's all, nothing. God doesn't discover things. He doesn't all of a sudden find it. He doesn't like make things go, oh, now that I made this thing, I just realized now what might happen. No. Everything by God has already existed. Past, present, and future are all one for God. So therefore, whatever the Gemara seems to imply that God is finding out for the first time, it's not true. This is part of the master plan. This is what was meant to be from the beginning. But the Gemara phrases it that way, so we'll stick with it for the time being. That God looked ahead and he saw that there were going to be a lot of bad people in the future who would abuse this light. So therefore, God hid the light for tzaddikim, lasid lavo, for righteous people in the future time. That's what Rashi says, and Rashi's just quoting the Gemara and the Medrash, right? And what we get from this is, wait a second, so that light's no longer available at this time. So then, what am I using right now? What am I reading by? What am I being illuminated by? So it's not the same light. Is it connected? Is it related? Is it an aspect of it? I mean, when a person says, I see the light, is that the light we're talking about? Or this information is so illuminating, even though that the actual, amount of light in the room hasn't changed, but somehow it feels like it did. When people get depressed, talk about like it's like a cloudy day and dark and it's, even though it's sunny and bright, but that's the way they feel. So it's like because they were cut out from this light, cut off from this light. Like what is this light? So Kabbalah talks about directly. I can show you inside the Sefer. We know exactly what this light is and where it actually is hidden. It's like where it was left over. And yes, the truth is that light is off limits and will not be available to us until well into the future. Even after 6,000, not even before 6,000. Why not? Because even though the light seemed to be there in the beginning, and it was, and why was it in the beginning? Because you have to understand how creation was made. So the way it looks like right now is that the first day of creation was not different than the sixth day of creation, except for the fact there was more things made, but the sixth day of creation, and man was able to walk on the face of the earth. But the first day, okay, so there was a lot of water, seas now, so God made the land and all that. But the truth is that creation itself from day one to day two, day three, day four, is actually evolving. It's evolving, from becoming more spiritual to less spiritual. It looks like we're going horizontal, like a timeline, but in truth is that we're going vertically. That the light is every day the light's moving further and further away from God, so therefore becoming more and more physical as it goes on. So the reason why the light could be there on the first day, because the first day of creation existed way up there on a level that we don't even know about, except technically through Kabbalah today, and we're down here. So what happens if you put too much water into a container that's too fragile to hold it? It will break, right? What happens if you allow too much electricity to reach an appliance that it can't more than it can handle? It will break. It will burn out. Right? The common problem they used to have in the old days, when people brought their hair dryers and their heaters there to Israel from Chutz La'aretz, which is a different currency, and as a result of that, they would plug it in, boom, that would be it. It would burn out the motor, whatever it was, right? So as a result of that, down here you can't access light. We can't access the light again until we go back up again, which is going to happen really beginning with the Messianic era, going through Techis and Mesim, and ultimately the world to come. So that's why the light had to, and that's really the hiding of the light. The hiding of the light really is not what it sounds like. And that's the moment, when you learn Kabbalah, that's what you find out. That everything is couched in everyday language, but the reality is very different. And if you want to understand what it is, you have to investigate and learn the rules and the principles and the terminology, and then it starts to change for you, and you have a much deeper, more profound understanding of creation and the world. But the actual hiding of the light, really technically speaking, was not that the light was taken back and hidden in a box somewhere, like we would hide something, but rather, since creation is moving further away, becoming more and more physical, it's becoming less possible to be able to use this light and receive this light. So therefore, it remains on its level while we go further away from it. So the actual hiding of the light is really us hiding ourselves from the light in the end. Just like Adam Arisha. He eats and he eats the dust Tovara. We talk about Hester Putting, the hiding of God's face. We do an Avera, we do something wrong, and God, he hides himself from us because we lose the right to see him. But if you look in the Garden of Eden, that's not what happened. Adam does his chet. Who hides? God hides? God's walking through the garden looking for Adam Arisha. He knows where he is, but he's pretending to hide, as if he doesn't. And Adam is the one who's hiding. He's the one in the bushes. And that's the truth of Hester Panim. Also, it's the reverse of what people think. The hiding of God's face is really the result of a person hiding themselves from God. So how do we do that? How does a person do that? Because when a person does an Avera, they become less spiritually sensitive. And if you're less spiritually sensitive, then you can't pick up the nuances of spirituality in life and creation. And so God can be right in front of your face, but you lose a bit to see him, to sense him. So that's what happened. Look, just ask any Baal Tshuva, right? The person who moves away from God thinks he's just waking up to this reality that I believed before, but now I see I was wrong. But the person who reverses that trend and goes towards God says and realizes, oh, he was actually always there, right in front of me, but I lack the spiritual sensitivity to be able to perceive it. It's like, it's like your eyesight weakens. So all of a sudden, you can't even see things in the distance anymore. They're right there in front of you, but they're just too hard to perceive. Put on a pair of glasses and voila. And all of a sudden now you can see. This is a very important point. It's very, very much tied to the whole holiday of Hanukkah, because we are told, and we need to understand what this means, that even though the light was hidden way up in the spheres, very high up to the source, and until we get back there, it's going to be hard to access that light. We're still told, first of all, that Adam Arishon was able to enjoy this light, or at least Tams is a part of this light, for a day and a half, 36 hours altogether, and that the light actually was hidden in 4 places. The 36 hours of Shabbos, and you'll see, of course, Shabbos only has 24 hours technically. We add a little extra time, but 24 hours, because one day. But even Erev Shabbos, the 12 hours of Erev Shabbos, have Kedushas Shabbos too, and that's why there are halachas governing the activities you can do from Chatzot onward, from midday onward, the rest of the day in advance of Shabbos. And that's when the light shone from Adam Arishan in the Garden of Eden. 12 hours, the Gemara says, Erev Shabbos, and 24 hours of Shabbos itself. That's one place. The other place is the 36 tractates, Masechtos, of the Talmud Bavli. Wow, who thought of that one? Right? How'd that happen? So the Medrash says, interesting enough, in Medrash Tanchuma in Parshas Noach, it says that, because the passage from Yeshaya, that the nation that walks in the darkness will see the great light. Well, the great light is talked about the Arganuz, obviously, and the Medrash says, "What's the great darkness?" And the Medrash says, "Talmud Bavli." But Talmud Bavli, because it's so hard to learn. You don't just learn Talmud Bavli, right, or the Yerushalmi for that matter, but you have to learn how to learn it, which is why so many people err when it comes to, because it's not just the learning itself, not just the material, because they also hid secrets inside the oral law, which wasn't supposed to be written down in the first place. So you have to learn how to learn it. But if you do, you go through all the 36 tractates, and that's why there's 36 tractates, then you will be zeichet to see the Oregon News, right? The third place that this light is hidden. Where's another famous 36? Lamed Vav Tzadikim. Somehow they have access to this light, which is also interesting because the Leshem says, he says, the hiding of the light is not what people think it is. The hiding of the light was the following thing, that God said from this point onward, not everybody can access this light. The light of the sun and the moon, the stars, that's clearly accessible to everybody. Good, bad. Everybody uses the same type of energy, light, it's available, right? But the light of the Or HaGenuz, that's only for tzaddikim. The hiding of the light is from the Rishoyim, don't forget. And even though it sounds like for tzaddikim, latzi lavo, in the future, there's some aspect of the light is available even now. So when a person becomes a tzaddik, their midos draw down this light to them, and they're able to access it and see with it. Because the Gemara says that with this light, Adam Rishon was able to see misofa olam at sofa olam, misofa olam at sofa, right, from one end of the world onto the other end of the world. So first of all, the world is round, so it's kind of hard to do that with any light, for that matter, without a bunch of mirrors involved. That's why we have satellites floating around, the sky. But it means that with his mind's eye, he could see things that the physical eye was limited, and could not see. So that's the Lamed Vav Tzadikim, and the fourth place is hidden in the 36 candles of Hanukkah. Which again is interesting. Why? Because there's no Gemara that says, and you have to light 36 candles. 36 is all important. It's crucial. This is what Hanukkah is all about. 36 candles, because that's the Oregon News. In those candles, somehow there's Oregon News, and you access it by the Gemara doesn't even mention the word 36. What it does say is a machlokus between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai about how to light the 36 candles, but not in terms of lighting 36 altogether. The number 36, if anything, seems incidental. Why? Because in order to commemorate the miracle and to beautify the miracle, we don't just light one, because the main mitzvah, the main halach, is to light one candle each day, because that's what happened in the Beis Hamikdash. If you just light one candle every day, you're yotze the mitzvah of Ner Hanukkah. You're not yotze mahadrin mitzvah, to beautify it, but you're yotze the mitzvah itself. So instead, what you're supposed to do is light one extra candle, every single day. So 1 + 2 + 3. That's Beis Hillel Shita, and he holds because you go up in kedusha but not down in kedusha. And Beis Shammai says no, the other way around. Start with 8, then go 7, then 6. And why? Because we learned from Sukkot. That's by Sukkot, the sacrifices. We began with 14 and kept reducing one by each day. So that's machlokas, and we know how we paskin because we go like Beis Hillel, and that is we're a cholik v'mosif. We add one candle each day, so 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 + 5, and if you happen to add them all up, you get 36. But why? Only because of the fact that you're adding all these candles, right? That's the only reason why. No one says it's not that you're lighting 36 candles. It's that you're lighting one each candle each extra day. It happens to be an 8-day holiday, but then again, that's hashgacha pratis. God arranged for it to be an 8-day holiday. That you would do all of this. And maybe Chazal knew something that they weren't actually telling us. They wanted us to find out for ourselves, because after all, that's what Hanukkah is all about. Going in search of the Or HaGenuz. So then what's the 25? That's the 36. Ner Hanukkah, and we understand the importance of it because the number itself alludes to the Or HaGenuz, and for another very, very important reason, which we won't get today, but maybe next week, Hashem, much deeper, more Kabbalistic. And you can actually read about it on my website, the one Shar Nun, which has the 24 days of Kislev with different oaths every day, and other books, or you can just write me and I'll tell you. But the other number is 25. It's unusual, by the way, that two numbers represent one concept. Usually you have one number for one concept. Here you have two numbers. 36, we already saw it. 25. What's the 25? Because when Hashem's making the light, it says Yehi Or, And the gematria of the word Yehi is 25. So you could actually replace the word with a number and say that God said, let there be light, right? And there was 25, the light, which is 25. So 25 represents the Or HaGenuz, because that's what was made with that word. That's what's referring to. So Yehi Or, 25 is the light. That's what the words mean. That's how you can read them. So that's not just incidental. We know that 25 is a hugely important number. The word ko itself is a very, very important word, which has the gematria of 25. So then why is it that we have why isn't one number good enough? Well, we already saw the reason why. We already kind of discussed it, because there's two states of the light. There's the hidden state, and there's the revealed state. And whenever the light is hidden, it's on the level of 25, which is why we say the Shema, which has 25 letters. And of course, Hanukkah is on the 25th day of the month, the only holiday to fall on the 25th day of the month. And because it's telling us that our job, or Lagoyim, right, the light unto the nations, our job is to find that light and then to reveal it. And the 36 is a way of telling us we've been successful. Because wherever there's going to be a revelation of this light from what's going on, there's going to be a 36. Like Yaakov being away from home for 36 years altogether. Marrying a wife, Leah, whose name totals 36, and whose wife, Rochel, dies at the border of Israel at the age of 36. Because there are 36 krisos, 36 averas, a person gets punished by getting cut off from the Jewish people, one of which is marrying two sisters at the same time, which the Avos did not do in Eretz Israel, which is why Rochel dies right there at the border, according to Ramban. So, Yaakov's life was all about this. And that's, you see clearly, because when Lavan says, I could, your God came to me, and I realized that all my blessing is because of you. So Lavan, just like Paro with Yosef, these people were forced to acknowledge the God of the Jewish people and that way of life, at least for the Jews, because of these people. So these were giluim. These are revelations of the light. So wherever there's a revelation of this light, like the miracle of Hanukkah, right, and Shabbos, you only keep Shabbos because of Hashem. Otherwise, you don't keep it. There's no reason for it. If you don't believe in God, you don't keep Shabbos, just for the sake of keeping it. So now the halachas. It's a huge Kiddush Hashem, right? As we say in Mincha, Shabbos afternoon, Shemoneh Esrei, that when we're Mekadesh Hashem by keeping the Shabbos, because it makes a statement. So wherever you're going to have a revelation, it's going to be 36. So 25 is the light while it's hidden, and 36 is the light while it's revealed. So now we can answer a question before finishing for today, that if you look and when Adam makes the mistake, which obviously has to do with the light and not bringing it out, and God comes looking for him, he asks, where are you? Now, normally, if you want to say, where are you in Hebrew, you would say, Eifota. Where are you? Eifota. That's not what God says. He says, Ayeka, which everyone translates as, where are you? Open the dictionary, and you won't find the word Ayeka anywhere. In fact, you won't find it anywhere else in Tanakh. You won't find it anywhere because Ayeka is not a word. It's not a Hebrew word. I mean, it's in the Chumash. God used it, right? But it's not a word. We don't use for fun. You might say Ayeka because that's what it meant in the Chumash. But Eicha, 100%. Same spelling, means how, right? Lamentations. Eicha, how could it be? How is it possible that this could happen? But Ayeka, but if you look at the word, the gematria of Ayeka is 36. There's our number. Oh, not just that number, but the word Ayeka could actually be divided into two parts. It's actually a combination of two words, Aya and Chov Hey. Where is 25? So it turns out that the roots of Hanukkah, they're back there, all the way back there. And God says to Adam Arishon, where's the light of 25? I made you in my image and endowed you with free will so you could find that light within creation and reveal it. to take it from 25 to 36. You didn't do that. As a result of that, you're going to be exiled. To do what? There's a reason why Hanukkah is the last holiday the Jewish people have before going to Galus until Mashiach comes. No more holidays. No holidays. Can't establish any more holidays. Not just because of authority, not necessary. Because Hanukkah was the answer to the Isidosra. It's the answer to Ayeka. That's the answer found in Ayeka. That's supposed to be curious until Mashiach comes. So we need to know how and why and what's tied to Hanukkah, why it's so quiet, why it's so mysterious, so hidden. Why don't we make a Suda? What's this 11 that makes you, 25 plus 11, or subtract 11? What is this 11? So, B'ezras Hashem, that we will do next week already within the holiday of Hanukkah. B'ezras Hashem. Okay. Good night. And have a good Shabbos.